Krystal Tomlinson. Thank you so much for giving me your ear for yet another couple of minutes to share with you a powerful story, some good vibes, good energy to power you through the week ahead. We do it on a Monday because we know Mondays are the hardest day of the week after a lovely Saturday, a restful Sunday, and you kind of have to jump back into everything and pretend like you're ready and ready to go emotionally, when sometimes you're just not ready yet. So we're hoping that this episode will get you ready for a powerful and emotionally healthy week where you have the right kinds of ideas and mindset to enjoy this journey we call life. So I'm here with someone who is familiar to me, right? Her name is Kamla Forbes and her story is multidimensional. We're going to talk about her surviving domestic abuse, her job now in physiotherapy and weight management. She's a salsa dancer too, and also the author of The Sweetest Conspiracy, mother of 3, and a strong political voice, at least in the social media space. If you don't follow Right Mango, you have to follow Right Mango because it's sweet for real. Kamla, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good to have you, and thanks for saying
me. Yes. Definitely. Anytime. Anything for you, Krystal.
Thank you. So, well, introduce yourself now to my listeners. Who is Kamla? Outside of the accolades, how can we describe the energy, the passion, the power that is the Right Mango?
Alright, Kamla, aka the Right Mango. It's just a loud mouth. From the born. When I was born, my parents said they gave me the nickname Screamla because they would stay in the adjoining community and hear me screaming.
Wow.
Yes. So at a young age, they sent me to, they thought something was wrong with my hearing. So they sent me all over the place to check my ears because they said, why this child talks so loud? Anyway, I eventually went into performing arts where I learned how to moderate my voice, my speech. But I always wanted to go into journalism. I wanted to do a lot of things. I'm a dancer. So my parents said, boy, dance and don't make no money, so you can't really dance. So they said, go to university. My mother is a physiotherapist.
Okay.
So I grew up seeing her in physiotherapy. I grew up in sports therapy. She works with athletes and footballers and she's involved in sports. So she kind of grew me in that. So I say, you know what, since I don't know what I'm going to do, because since them tell me I can't dance my way through life, let me just go to this university thing and do physiotherapy. So that's how I ended up doing physiotherapy. I had a little stint as a model. And while I was a model, I used to work out at Spartan. And I got interested in fitness and nutrition. I went into Miss Spartan Body Beautiful, bodybuilding, fitness, all of that. And so I kind of fused that with physiotherapy. But as I graduated from UWI as a physiotherapist, I went to Endo Manley because I just wanted to dance. So I always danced right through. Now, in terms of me and my political voice and political activism, I did have one grandmother. They used to call her the Lion Lady because she was such a dynamic political activist. And I spent a lot of time with her as a child. And basically, it was instilled in me. It was instilled in me. So I grew up in the politics and I grew up I saw her advocating for the rights of the poor, the disenfranchised, especially women. She was very, very active in the women's movement. So I followed, Kamla is a melting pot of her family, really. Everything that's family and a little bit of me, because none of them can dance. Only me alone.
Only the family. Mommy gave a little bit of the appreciation for science, physiotherapy, and grandma for politics.
And the activism, definitely.
Okay. Right. So we have been talking quite a bit about emotional health and wellness on this podcast because it's sort of your primer. Before you paint the house, there's something that you have to do first, just to make sure that the coat of paint will last long and look good when it's finished off. We want us to appreciate the importance of being emotionally healthy, understanding how we feel, why we feel the way we feel, and how those feelings help us to put on weight or take it off, right? How it helps the muscles to regenerate in physiotherapy or not. How you transmit your language in dance. All of that depends on your feelings. It's like the internal wiring.
Exactly.
How would you describe your emotional landscape? Do you find yourself experiencing the best kinds of emotions as you dance? Politics tends to bring out a lot of angst and anger in people. Do you find that space makes you, more in tune with the negative emotions that the positive ones? Talk to me about that.
So right, I am very guided by my emotions, and politics does bring out the worst in us sometimes. So the dance, for me, dancing actually is the buffer. It has to be the buffer because I only come alive when I dance really, but I come alive in another way with politics. So it's like yin and yang, you know, it has to, something, if you do too much of the politics and you don't take a step back every now and then, it's like it consumes you. You know, and as I said, I'm very, very guided by my emotions, and being an emotional being, it manifests itself physically. You know, this year has been a very emotionally traumatic year for me. My 3 children are very sick. I nearly lost my eldest to dengue. Actually, we had, so it's been up and down. And I mean, I'm an emotional eater, and even though I am a physiotherapist and I do nutrition,
You know the
and
right thing.
I'm a weight management specialist, I still put on 20 pounds while my children were sick, you know, and instead of beating myself up, I embrace it and say, here what, you see, we are about to start a new year, I will just have to reset myself because emotionally, I'm exhausted. I was literally on an emotional roller coaster with my 3 children. So as soon as one, alright, you get one out of the way and yeah, one settle down, the next one. And then when you finish with them, so you say, alright, breathe, the next one. And you know, the last one was the worst. I literally nearly lost my child. And so I have not recovered. And so I decided to take the rest of this year to recover emotionally before people start troubling me so fat. You understand?
Yeah.
So that's just one example of how emotions manifest physically. It manifests not just physically, but in terms of mentally, how you cope. Because I find that I'm unable to function because my emotions are all over the place. And exactly. You can't, there's no balance, you can't focus because your brain all over the place.
So let's dig up into the early years of Kamla now. So we understand that you're able to even pick up now that you're an emotional eater, but when we're younger, we don't have a very good understanding of our feelings and what they mean and what they cause us to do, what we allow to happen to us because of just how we're feeling on the inside. What are some major lessons that you learned growing up? It may be related to emotional wellness, it may not, but what are some key life lessons that you learned in childhood that you needed in order to move to your next level?
In childhood, I was a very sheltered child. My parents only have 2 children, so just me and my brother who grew up in a very sheltered cocoon. So basically, when I hit the world literally boxed me over when I actually understood what living adulting was like. But what I learned from my childhood is family, the importance of family. You understand? Because I'm telling you, basically because of how I grew up, I understand why it is so important to stick by your children so rigidly, especially in Jamaica today. But I learned that you are nothing without a support system. You understand? It is so important to have, because trust me, it's one of times me would have crumbled if I didn't have somebody to hold me up. And it don't have to be your actual family, you know. It can be people who are like family because you've built those relationships. So building strong bonds is very important, and I learned that from a very young age because, you know, we have the cliché saying, the little cliché sayings that no man is an island, and it takes a village to raise a child, all of these things, but it's so true because if you want to be able to go through some of the roughest challenges in life, some of my challenges, if me never have a strong support system, I would have fallen by the wayside a long time.
Now, you did have an experience, and you can tell us about the length of it, the nature of it, and the lessons in that with domestic abuse.
Yes.
What in your childhood do you think made you a victim, no survivor of that kind of a relationship? Could you have seen it coming? Now that you stand back at the end, what is it that happened early out that made you emotionally available to that kind of relationship?
I think it's the fact that I was so sheltered. because I grew up in a household where my parents had a perfect marriage. I've never seen my parents argue. I've never seen my parents fight. My father has never slept out. I don't have any other siblings. It's just the two of us. We're like the picket fence family. And so it just did not occur to me outside of that these things are possible because I've never seen it before. So that is what made me so emotionally available because I expected to go through life finding the same experience with the first person that I fell in love with.
Are those the rose-colored glasses that people talk about?
Yes.
Like things go so well that
Yes.
you see the world, it's just everything is good and it's all nice and it's all fancy.
That's exactly it. And you see the signs, but then you ignore the signs because you are so focused on keeping up the appearance that everything is perfect that you ignore the warning signs. And the thing is, I was involved with my ex-husband from a very young age, so it's not like I had any experience. I didn't have any sisters growing up. And so the only real experience I had to fall back on was the experience between my parents.
Not having those moments of bad. And we're not saying that anybody wants to be abused, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying that we needed to see a mother and your father go through
Exactly.
something rough and difficult for you to appreciate it. But in not having to deal with anger in the home and watching them go through an argument and then resolve it, you wouldn't have had that example to draw on in your
Definitely not.
relationship.
Definitely not. And 2020 hindsight is really something because looking back, I can say that being such a sheltered child, I really ended up going through everything that most children go through during children who experience bad things in their childhood. I experienced most of them in early adulthood. It's just that my parents happened to shelter me from it in one phase of my life. But it's something I believe that in terms of destiny, when some lessons need to be taught to you, you are going to learn them no matter what stage you are in life. If you are supposed to learn a lesson, you are going to learn it. It found you. The lesson found you. And so my lesson found me.
Tell me about that marriage, that relationship now, the lessons that you were able to pull from there.
Alright, so I ended up being with my ex-husband from I was a very young age, from high school days. He was at that time significantly older. No, it's not really much of an issue because it's like a 10-year gap. But the thing is, being in that situation, I didn't have any other relationship to compare it to. So everything that happened when I was being cheated on, I didn't have anything to compare it to say, okay, this is not the norm. The warning signs that would normally go off, I didn't. Because I was so young, it just never went off.
What were some of those signs that you missed? What would
the emotional abuse, basically instilling in me that he's doing me a favor by being with me. You understand? And sometimes I would see my father look and say, why are you allowing this man? My father never liked him. And I used to wonder, but to me,
nobody's
ever going to be good enough. So I didn't look at the signs. I say to people all the time, even in my writings, that I can look right back through that relationship and I can see warning signs at every interval. There's a warning sign. There's a warning sign when we were just involved. There's a warning sign when I was pregnant with the first child, because we had the first child before we got married. There's a warning sign before we got married. There are warning signs right throughout. Like God was guiding me to choose a different path. I'm just not listening. I'm just not listening. I'm going on the wrong path. They keep taking the wrong path. Until it reached the point where the emotional abuse became verbal abuse, and the verbal abuse became physical abuse, until it reached a point where we would basically fight. Because I'm not the type of person to cower down easily. And we were at the point where it became physical fights, so I guess that if I should look back on it now, there are points that I should have left that I didn't leave.
What fears do you think kept you longer than you should have been?
My children. And it sounds so cliche, but the truth is, I wanted my children to have what I had. Two loving parents. But in the long run, I realized that I was so unhappy. I was depressed. And it was affecting me being a mother to them, you know. And it's a friend that I have, a very good friend, that looked at me one day and said, Kamla, what are you doing? You are in a dysfunctional situation. Somebody literally had to like slap me out of it because it was like I was in a trance. I was acting as though all of these things were normal, you know? Yeah. And so a third party had to step back and say, Kamla, these things are not normal. It's affecting, by this time our eldest child started acting up. You know, it's affecting him. So I had to make the decision to find a way out. Mind you, there are several times that I separated from him, but he would always find a way. No matter where I go, this man would find me. You know, he would always find me. And then weasel him way back in, and then say, boy, I want him, family, all of that, and then we go back to square one. Yes, it starts with the womanizing, the drinking, the womanizing, the fights for no apparent reason. You understand? And basically, it was his need to allow, to make me accept the fact that he would never be one of us. And that's where most of it stemmed from. And I have two sons, I didn't want my sons having that kind of value system. I didn't want that. I think that was the scariest part for me. And my daughter, I didn't want to be weak in her eyes. When I look back at it, I think, yes.
You needed to show her that courage,
yes,
for her to model it.
To model it.
So in the moment that you're experiencing the fear that is keeping you in that relationship, there's another fear of underperforming maybe as a parent,
yes,
you know, that you use to count and to pull you out.
Exactly.
Interesting how fear can kill fear.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Tell me that moment now where you had your catalyst, your transformation, where you decided that it just not enough for me here anymore.
And I tell this story so often, but that moment is when I realized that when I caught him again in another act of infidelity, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't upset. And I think at that point, that was August 31st, 2013, I remember, because it hit me like a ton of bricks, that I was no longer emotionally attached to this man. And so it was just a matter of me finding a way to move on with my life. And knowing from past experiences that he would never ever allow me to move on. It was a matter of keeping up appearances until I could leave. You know, I did a blog post recently about leaving the man without him knowing that you're leaving him. You know, and how important that is, because we're in an environment now where we see so much domestic killings. Even today there's a domestic killing where people fight, and we heard on the news that this woman asked this man to move out, and they were fighting, and he basically stabbed her in her neck and killed her. You understand? And so if we learn to control our emotions and think things through rationally, it makes it so much easier, because we can plan. We can plan how we are going to do it, because, I mean, this man is violent. He's been violent to me before. If I get up and say, listen, I'm done with you, I'm over, leaving, it's gonna start a fight. If it start a fight, there was one particular fight where my son ended up being injured as collateral damage. I never want that to happen again, you know? So it was about timing and planning. And so August 31st, 2013, in my mind, my marriage was over. We still were in the same space. We still had to do things together. We still had to cohabit for the time being. But at that point, it no longer mattered to me that he was unfaithful, because I know that he's unfaithful and it's not going to change. This is like what? The 12th woman, I mean, obviously, this is it, you know? So I started working on me. I wasn't dancing at that time. I went back into my dancing, because that's always my escape. I started finding things to do by myself, extracurricular activities, hobbies, everything, engage my mind, focus, to build myself emotionally. And I started focusing more on my children. And I think he felt that I was pulling away. So by the end of 2013, we started fighting again because by this point he sensed that I'm no longer emotionally attached to him. So going into 2014, I said, listen, we're fooling ourselves, it don't make no sense. I actually moved, I wasn't even staying at the house anymore, I was staying with my parents, we were living in Spanish Town at the time, my parents were in Kingston. The children were even going to school in Spanish Town, but I prefer to drive them to Spanish Town to school every day than stay there. Till eventually, it's like the more I withdrew is the more, he would find me on the road and start confronting me. And so there was an opportunity for me to go to Nigeria in 2014. And I thought to myself, I don't want to leave my children. Listen, Ebola is now over there. I'm not going to Nigeria and leave my picnic them. So I called him and I said to him, there's an opportunity for me in Nigeria, but I don't want to go. And I know that you can do it and you do it well. I'm giving you the ticket, you go. You understand? And I found it a one-way trip for him to go to Nigeria. Because what that did for me, it allowed me to recover emotionally. You understand? Because by this time it was about April 2014, thereabouts. I was tired of the confrontation because obviously we're separating and it's like he's not admitting it, he's fighting it. And so it gave me the space that I needed to just break free of all of this emotionally, just physically, everything, and move on.
That is such an interesting approach to separating yourself from somebody.
Yeah.
You are trying to go, and remember that's always the call to action, pack up your things, ladies, and leave. And no matter how you leave him, fine you.
Yeah.
You leave him, fine you, fine you.
He'd stay if I want to stay with my parents, he would stay the whole night at my parents' house. Yeah, I remember separating from him already and moving to another property that my parents had. And pack up and leave and, we fight, yeah man, go on, whatever. And within 4 days, he's back and he's camped out there and he can't get in and break the window. He literally broke the window to break into the house so these are the things I used to have to go through. It was so emotionally toxic.
Yeah.
You understand? So it had to be different. It had to be different.
And so your approach is, listen, go and invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Go and see the world.
Yeah.
Go and take on this opportunity. And you bought yourself, with that one-way ticket, you bought yourself the room to release a lot of that toxicity.
Exactly.
And to heal.
And I did heal. The person I've moved on, the person I'm with now, was such an instrumental part of that. We have been friends from 1999. And it's so ironic that I actually fell in love with him because we have been so close for ages. And he was such a big part of my healing in that him live at the mountain top. We would say it all the time, he live at the top of Garden Town. And he would just take me up there for walks, for just clear my mind. It's amazing how just a trek through the hills can clear your mind. And he would just carry me up there and say, this is therapy. I would just walk by the river, up and down, and I got fitter, started losing. It had so many effects on me. You understand? It really helped me emotionally, and that is how I was able to just refocus. And it's not easy because people think when you leave a marriage, it's easy. No, you have to start from scratch. You have to literally start from scratch. And I think that is why so many women are afraid to leave, because you have to start over. You have to start your life over from scratch.
Because we're intertwined now, My money is your money,
Exactly.
my house is your house, my car is your car.
Exactly. And I lost everything.
And
I lost
all of it.
everything. I lost my car, I lost my house, I lost everything. And then at the time, he was so vindictive at the time as well. By the time he come back and realize, he was so vindictive. I lost everything. I had to start over from scratch.
What were the new fears now that you had to confront in this rebuilding and regeneration of Kamla?
Basically, the new fears that I have to confront now is if I will be able to return my children to the lifestyle that they were accustomed to. You know, when I was married to him, before I had to basically take them and run and start over from scratch. You know, if I would be able to achieve financially what I had before, you know, I took a plunge, I started a business, went out on my own, and it's been rough. So most of my fears are centered around providing for my children, because I have 3 children and I'm basically almost a single parent.
And is he in contact with his children at all?
Yes, and it was nasty. And the thing about it is, he did not understand that for me to heal and move forward, I had to speak about my experience. I had to make it, because having it bottled up inside of me, even though I look like I move on, it still was eating at
things
me.
you need to talk about.
Yes,
you know,
to
so
get it out.
Yeah.
And I started, I'm writing a book about it, and I started doing my blog posts about my experiences. And he came on and he started confronting me, you understand, started attacking me. And I think we're at the point now that we are cordial. We go through the whole custody battle and everything, and even though I have custody of my children, I still allow them to, I still allow for him to be involved. Because they want their father, they want to see daddy. So fine, I have to be the big enough person to allow them to have that relationship, because that is healing for me as well. So basically, I'm at that point emotionally where we're cordial, and he's involved in their lives as you know, as their dad.
One of the things that we do as we walk out of that darkness, yeah, it's one step at a time, doing the thing that is still uncomfortable, that you really want to stop doing, but because you have to plan, you have to strategize, we're going to walk this walk for now, but we just have to do it until I can get to where I need to get. What did you tell yourself in that period from August 31 until you got to go to Nigeria in 2014? What were you telling yourself as you made dinner for him, as you did the laundry for him, and clean up behind him, and all those things that you still had to do as you were planning your exit? What did you have to tell yourself?
I told myself that I was doing it for my children, because, as I said, we had big fights, and I didn't want the children to experience that anymore. So I had to, the end game had to be the welfare of the children, because before that, going into that holidays, I had behavioral issues with our eldest child, who was now in high school, and coming out of second form, going into third form, the school said, listen, you need to do something about his behavior, you know, and so we had to get him a behavioral therapist, and who happened to be a very good friend of mine, and she said, she was the one who said, listen, it's his environment that is affecting him. You're in a violent household, you're in a toxic environment, you need to get the child out of it. So always in my head, the end game had to be the children, especially my eldest son. Right now, we are inseparable. My eldest child and I, we're literally, up to last night, because my car go party, he's 18 now, took him to our party, and I had to go back for him in the middle of the night time. We couldn't find him friend, he wouldn't leave his friend, so I had to make the round like a taxi and drop him friend them all over the place. So, I live for my children, and anybody who interacts with me knows this, that this is all at the end of the day for them. You know, I have to get up, because it's a whole heap of time I feel like giving up. A lot of times I felt like this just not worth it. But then when I think about the children, they are even, I mean, my youngest is 8 years old, and he not living a life yet. You know, and they are so attached to me that I know, say, I have to make it okay for them. I don't trust anybody else to raise my children.
There is a conversation that eventually comes up for every mother especially, and I'm sure fathers have these kinds of thoughts too. But as a new mom, I also feel myself just taking back all, if not most, of the ambitions that I have for myself, and just starting to prioritize all the dreams and stuff that I have for my little girl now. And psychologists at some point tell you, you can't do that. You have to put back yourself in the mix. But I think it's part of this broader truth that as parents, we are far more likely to change for our children
Yes.
than we will change for ourselves.
You are so
So
right.
Kamla knew that the relationship was toxic, and Kamla knew that this was not a very healthy thing. But until you needed to change it for your children, that sense of urgency wasn't there. Brendan Bashar wrote a book about high performance habits, and he says one of the things that high performers are able to do is to raise that sense of urgency.
Yes.
Sometimes it's our children, sometimes it's financial, ill health, sometimes it's our parents who need us.
Yes.
How are you using that sense of urgency now with your children to do other things?
Boy, I've started my business because I realized I used to be a drug wreck. Used to drive up and down and talk to doctors about medication. I did that for a long while. And you know, it allows a certain lifestyle because we're well paid. But at the back end, you don't spend a lot of time with your children, you know? And I realized that at one point the helper was raising the children, because when the job says go to Puerto Rico, for instance, or Bahamas, you have to go, or Cayman, wherever they send you, you have to go. I used to spend at least 1 week out of every month in Montego Bay working. And I was at a point now where I have 3 children, and these people want to send me to 2 out of town. I needed to do 2 out of town runs for the month. That is 2 weeks out of every month away from home. You know, so eventually that take a toll, but then you now have to balance, all right, well, how the bills going to get paid. You understand? So it's how do you prioritize now? So this prompted me to start my business. You know, I had to think outside of the box, because I mean, it's either you go work as a physiotherapist, it's either you go work with government, or you start your own business. You understand? Or you go into pharmaceuticals. And the best option to just be there for my children. My children needed a mother. And especially since now I was a single mother and they needed me more than ever. I couldn't be driving all over the place and allowing help after help, because as soon as one have a problem, and I may have one helper who tell me she's not coming back because I'll be by her in the room.
My goodness.
I'm serious.
And so it's new personalities coming and going, coming and going.
It's not healthy, and so I don't have a helper anymore. I used to have a living helper for a year. I don't have that anymore. I raise my children myself and with my partner, and with the extended help from my family members, you know. And I find that they're so much more settled. They're settled, they're focused. It's so much easier than all over the place again, you know, as it was before when I was up and down on the board. So certain things, sometimes those sacrifices, you have to make them for the children. And I remember when I was going through this ordeal, I lost my car. The car was in both my name and my ex-husband's name, and the bank repossessed the car, and I needed a car to work. And I remember working so hard in that week. It was about 2 weeks. I had to rent a car, and I was able to work enough, because you know we work on commission, and I was able to repurchase a car in 2 weeks literally, but based on the commission, because I needed to take my children to school. I think even more than, I can't take taxi to go work and thing, but I need to carry my kids to school, and that was the biggest driving factor for me, you know. So I made the money. It wasn't the car that I had before, but it was enough to get them from point A to point B and start up back and build. So when people attack me, because I do get a lot of attack, that's why they call me the right man.
So things don't
right. So when people attack me, they don't know the story of where I am and why I no longer have the pretty Honda Civic. And I know I started back with a little Nissan. And you know, I have to start over and build myself back up. You understand? It's just my journey that I have to go through, but I am not going to put myself out to this lifestyle when I have a child that is now in college, you know. And I have another one who is in high school, and then preps may have one more in a prep school, and prep school fee expensive, you know, so we have to prioritize.
Priorities, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
So you move now into, practicing, because you're already trained in physiotherapy. So now you're practicing full time.
Full time.
This is your
Yes.
business, your brand.
New Body Solutions.
Okay, so tell me where that road is taking you now.
Alright, so I started New Body Solutions in 2016, and I mean, I've had 2 very good years. My niche really is weight management. You know, I help people to basically achieve their body image goals. It's been rewarding. I've worked with a lot of people who have, because I'm based at a medical center with mostly gynecologists. I'm at Winchester Medical.
Oh,
Right, so I have a lot of about 12 gynecologists are where I work, and I get a lot of people who need to lose weight for other reasons, whether it be health reasons, or some of them have infertility because of the excess weight, and so may go on 10 baby this year. As I tell people. Yeah, so it's been rewarding in more ways than one, and people, I like that the fact that I can change how people feel about themselves. You know, because I've been overweight. I am overweight now because of my own struggles. But the thing is, I can relate because I have been there. And this is what I use to inspire people in my journey. Listen, obesity is not a one-time thing that you're going to fix overnight. It is a constant struggle. It is a day-to-day struggle. It is about making important choices and about not beating up yourself if you fall back. If you get there are certain things in life that you have to accept that you will not be able to control. You can't control every experience. It's about how you overcome the challenges, right? So if you're battling obesity, it's about making those small little changes that can affect your overall health, because it's not just about your weight, it's about your health.
The lifestyle.
Overall, the lifestyle. It has to be a lifestyle overall.